Amen. Cool. So this morning we're going to be talking about the daily schedule and missions programming. And this talk is really designed for you guys to think on your feet, right? So most of this work should actually be done by the coach with the host. And what this talk is designed to do is to help you if something falls through while you're on the ground, especially because you guys are now going internationally. It's harder for us as a coach to just fly there or meet you there or talk to you on the phone and say, hey, this is what you need to do, right? You guys have to be able to think on your feet if something falls through. But to do that, you have to understand how we think and why we think to planning a mission trip. So that's really what this talk is designed to do. And we'll do a few activities throughout the course of this talk. So let's dive in. I'm going to start kind of at the 30,000 foot view and just talk about what we do in Focus, right? So in Focus, what do? We preach the gospel. Great. We serve the poor. And third, we facilitate encounters with facilitate encounters with Jesus. And you might be thinking, okay, well, why are we talking about like the large scale of what Focus does? And I would say it's because we're one of the best trained evangelists, at least that I know, right? Like we go through summer formation, traditionally 5 weeks. We go through formation throughout the year with your teams on campus. And you do other stuff, right? Some of you are in classes, some of you are doing master programs. And it's to teach us and develop us as evangelists, right? And so when we go on mission and we forget about the fact that we're one of the best trained evangelists, we actually forget about who we are and what we've done in our apostolate, right? So I want to bring us back to the core of our yes to Focus, right? To know Jesus and to make him known. And that's one of the best assets that we can actually bring onto a mission trip. Some of you guys will do manual labor projects. Some of you will go to Vallejo to build stairs. I went 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago, had not a single idea how to use concrete or how to build stairs. But what I could do was share the gospel. And maybe I couldn't speak perfect Spanish, but I could bring a catechism to them. Or I could share the gospel with the students that I brought. And so I want you guys to know that you've already been trained in this. You're still continuing to be formed in this. To bring the gospel literally to the ends of the world. And this is your call. And this is my hope for you, is that wherever you go, you would bring that spirit, you would bring the spirit of the gospel to those that you encounter. Okay, so we started off at 30,000. Let's dive a little deeper, go into the 20,000 feet overview, and go into mission specific, and talk about the daily schedule. But part of talking about the daily schedule is actually knowing about the non-negotiables of a Focus mission trip, right? And you guys have all been on a Focus mission trip in some capacity. My guess is that you served as a leader on some trip in the past. And that's why you're here, right? That's why you're here. That's why you've been invited to direct a mission trip, because you served in some way in the past. So what are some non-negotiables? I'll start us off. Mass. What else?
Holy hour.
Holy hour. Curriculum talks, yep.
Hello, God.
Hello, God moments, yep. Sleep. Yes. Great. And the actual service, right? So, daily mass, daily prayer, formation, the curriculum talks, the actual service itself, daily reflection, which is the Hello, God moments, night prayer, and then group safety is number one. I want to share a story about a spring break trip that I went as a college student. So I went with my sorority sisters to do this service project, and we spent a week down in Florida. And the whole time that we were there, we spent about an hour, maybe if we were feeling generous, 2 hours, doing service. And the other time we just spent at like local bars, we spent on the beach, we spent doing whatever we wanted to do. And at that time, I thought that I was a really good person because I gave up my spring break to do 1 to 2 hours of service every single day. But when I came back, nothing about my life had changed, right? My worldview had not changed. My desire to help people did not change. I thought it was only like, this is the 1 week that I'm going to separate myself and do something good for somebody else. But in fact, like, nothing about my life had actually changed. And I think this list is why we have non-negotiables on mission trips. This is what separates Focus from any other mission trip or any other service opportunity or any other, whatever you want to call it, right? Because it helps not only us as missionaries, but it helps our students change their worldview, to convict our hearts that we should be living for Jesus. So a couple things, right? With daily Mass, if you have the opportunity to invite locals, to invite the neighbors that you're working with, to, when you're doing home visits maybe, to invite those people to Mass, take those opportunities to invite them to Mass, to pray with you, to pray for them. Again, with formation, with curriculum talks, it helps shape our worldview. And students, more oftentimes than not, and I think this goes with missionaries too, we aren't convicted and we won't transform our hearts. We can't allow our hearts to transform if we don't understand the why, right? And so formation talks, actually, they're designed to help you understand the why of who we are as Catholics, to then convict our hearts that this is the way that we should be living and who we should be living for. One thing with High God moments is at the end of every day, or whenever you guys do them, it's a really good pulse check on where your students are at. And so if you guys never do High God moments, and suddenly you find out one of your students, it's just not is not feeling okay or whatever, you guys could have seen that coming if you've done High God moments every day. So it's important to get a pulse check, to then pull them aside the day after, or have a one-off conversation with them to just check in, to make sure that they're doing okay. And to not let that build until the end of the trip. So all of these are the non-negotiables of mission. And this brings me to the question that I want to ask you guys for this class. When you walk away from a mission trip, what impact do you hope to leave on those you serve? I'm guessing that you're here because mission trips have impacted your life in some way. And so I want to return that question to you. What impact do you hope to leave on those you serve? Maybe it's an encounter at Mass. Maybe it's just for them to know that they're loved. Maybe it's for you to actually know them, their hearts, their person, their dignity. So I want you to take 30 seconds, jot something down really quick. Whether it's in your curriculum handbook or your formation book or your prayer book, wherever, just jot something down. We're going to move into things to consider when we're doing a mission trip. And this is what the missions team kind of thinks about when we're planning mission trips. And again, it's good for you guys to understand what we think about so that if something falls through on the ground, you have this background knowledge to then plan something on the ground. And as I go into this, I'm going to get back to this question of what impact do you hope to leave? So the first one is cultural realities. And this really summed up in one word is impact. How could what you do impact the community? Is it only benefiting a certain person, or is it benefiting the whole community? And so sorry, I should have mentioned this. In your mission director handbook, it's pages 30 through 37, if you want to follow along. Okay, so back to cultural realities, back to the impact. We always have to be collaborating with the local clergy and the authorities, which in our instance, the authorities is our hosts, right? So we always want to be working with our hosts to make sure that we're planning something that is benefiting them. And I have this picture up here. This is when I went to the Philippines 2 summers ago. And this is one student that I brought on mission with me. Her name is Sally. And in the Philippines, our mission is working with elderly men and disabled children who have been thrown on the streets because their parents or their families don't want to take care of them anymore. So the missionaries of the poor go out into the streets. They take those people in. They give them food, shelter, clothing. But oftentimes what happens is when community service groups or when charities go in, they go straight for the kids. Right? It's easy. You play with kids, have a good time. It's a lot harder to be with the older generation, to be with the grandpas there. And the missionaries of the poor really challenged our group to go outside of our comfort zone, to invest in the grandpas, to be with them, to sit with them. Even if we couldn't understand them, even if we couldn't communicate to them, just to sit at their bedside, to really just walk with them. And so when Sally first met this grandpa, he was bedside, didn't want anything to do with our group, wouldn't even look at us, wouldn't even talk to us. And every day, Sally sat next to him by his bed and would just start talking. And I honestly have no idea what they were talking about because it seemed like he was not even interested. And she just had a smile on her face, was talking the whole time. And this picture I took at the end of our mission trip because to me it shows the impact that Sally had on this man and the impact that he had on her, right? Which was a mutual sign of hope, a mutual sign of love, that no matter what life circumstances were, they were there, and they wanted to know the person, and they wanted to be with the person. So I love that story because it shows us that, yeah, we're called out of our comfort zone. We're called to leave an impact on this world. We're called to leave this impact, to know and to spread that joy of the gospel to other people. Okay, so that's the first one, cultural realities. Second one is the authentic need. To find out what a community actually needs and not just what we think that it needs, right? And it's so easy for us to just go in somewhere, look at the overall picture and say, actually, if you just fix this, this, and this, everything will be better. But that's not true. And that's why we work with our local hosts to say, hey, Alejo, like, what does your community actually need? Versus, I see this problem, and I'm going to help you, and I'm going to go in there and fix it for you. Right? Which brings me to my third point is sustainability. To consider the long-term vision of a project, is it going to last? Is it sustainable without foreign sources? Can we buy, if we're doing a building project, can we buy local resources from the country to help their economy? Or do we have to ship stuff from the United States or wherever? And could another mission trip group finish what we started? Finish what you guys have left off? And fourth, local buy-in. I think one of the dangers oftentimes is that we can be seen as a bank, as any mission trip group can. We can be seen as a bank. And so how do we prevent that from happening? We have to have local buy-in. We have to have people on the ground who are willing to help us alongside, who are willing to help us build those stairs, so that even when we leave, they actually are invested in their own community. They're actually invested in their own people. And when we do leave, they want to take care of it on their own. They want to continue whatever it is that we're doing. A couple instances, like in Indonesia, right? Are there students we could be teaching how to lead a Bible study so that when we leave, they can actually teach other people? Like I mentioned in Peru, are there local neighbors who are willing to help us build stairs? Again, so that when we leave, the locals are still there. They're still invested in their own community, that they can finish those stairs, even if we get one stair, one step down. Cool. We're going to move into the types of projects and programming, and hopefully all of you guys know or have a general idea of what type of project you're going to do on the ground. So we're going to actually move you guys into 4 different groups. So if you're doing manual labor, I want you to come to this table. If you're doing evangelization, I want you to go to that back table. If you're doing home visits, go to the back right table. And then if you're doing other types of service, I want you to stay at this table. And what I mean by evangelization, if largely your mission trip is leading Bible studies or teaching catechesis, that's what evangelization is. Other services is if you're going to a soup kitchen or if you're working with maybe like a nonprofit or a non-Catholic organization, that's what other services are. So I want you guys to split off right now, go to the corners, manual labor, evangelization, home visits, other services. Notes as well for you guys. So let's start off with manual labor. So from either group, will one of you guys share kind of the impact that you guys, or the cultural reality that you guys have come up with?
Yeah, we can go. That, like, creating an actual structure that kind of can last longer than we're going to be able to say.
Yeah.
So there's kind of more than just us being there that it impacts.
Totally. Cool. What about authentic need?
There's a lot of planning that goes into it. It's not like you just get there and then something's decided, but there's budget before you get there and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, sustainability.
I'll go now.
All right, Zach, take it away.
Yeah, just kind of coming in and continuing the projects from prior shifts and communication with prior shift directors to continue what's already been happening there.
Yeah, that's a great thought. Communicating with previous directors, or even directors that will go after you, right? Okay, and last one, local buy-in.
Just like a lot of opportunity to invite locals into helping it, like without the actual construction building, but also sourcing all the supplies and whatever is necessary for projects or CBD.
Yeah,
So kind
awesome.
of like leads into the rest of it as well.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Zach. Yeah, you touched on a lot of things that I was going to say. Some things to think about with manual labor. What are the resources that are available around me? Again, like Zach said, to get locals involved in the labor. Agree with your host beforehand. And a lot of this, right, again, is the coach, the missions coach, to work out with the host prior to you guys arriving. But to agree beforehand on the cost, kind of like you said, Zach, about the budget. And one more important thing is to not leave extra money lying around or to just give to them as a donation. Because it brings back the idea that we can be seen as just a bank, and there's a grave danger in that. And so if you guys do have extra money in your budget, talk to your missions coach about what you can do to help the local community in that way. That's great. Thanks, Zach.
You're welcome.
Okay, in the back, evangelization. We're going to go through the same four. So if anyone wants to take it away.
So you started cultural realities. We talked about keeping in mind what the host actually wants us to be sharing to, and just depending upon the culture, the local culture, and how the best to go about sharing the gospel. So just going to keep going on this. Authentic need. Talked about referring them to the host. So actually, like saying that, I guess this might be more sustainability, but the host is there longer, and so they know what the need is. And so as long as we're working hand in hand with them, like always bringing up the host name or whatever, like the organization that we're working with, as well as Chris mentioned, like just being okay with like throwing our plan out the window. Like we come in with a plan, and just being flexible to like, throw it in the trash. And then long term, we talked about keeping in mind, like we do on campus, potential like commission disciples, people that are like going to be starting as leaders on the church that are local, that like they have a heart for others, they have a heart for mission. We talk to them. And Samuel mentioned like they'll be working with families, so keeping in mind what's the dynamic going to be like as they go back into their families, as they leave the camps that we're putting on and go back into their families. And then local buy-in. We casted vision of spiritual multiplications.
Like a true focus missionary. Okay, yeah, great. Thanks, JB. Some other things with evangelization. Yeah, are there ways to lead Bible studies? Are there ways to give talks to the group, to the people that we're working with, to share your testimonies? I think that's huge on any mission trip, right? But especially with evangelization, to share our witness of how Jesus transformed our lives. Could we do something with entertainment, right? Whether it's a skit, whether it's showing a movie. When we went to the DR, it was around Christmas time, and one of the best ways that Father brought our group and the local community was to show a movie about Jesus in Spanish and then have English subtitles. So something as simple as that. Could you plan something like that for the group? Great. Thanks, JB. Okay, home visits. Same four things. If someone wants to rapid fire those.
Yeah, so for cultural realities, looking at like what are some of the underlying just assumptions of like walking into a person's home in the country that we're going to. And again, also looking at like, okay, what language are we walking into, and like how can we better ourselves to actually communicate. Authentic need, again, like working with the host to say like, okay, who, especially like my church before, like working with a priest there in the country. So what does your community need? Where do you need people to be going particularly? As far as like long-term vision, and like sustainability, are we actually building a missions culture that would make it more likely that the next group who comes would actually be welcomed into a person's home? Or is this like an awkward like interaction that they're like, we're never opening those kind of missionary people again? And then as far as like local buy-in, we were actually talking a little bit about like in like building community like through song, like being able to like span the age range a little bit more, and like finding creative ways to like try to connect, the elderly and the younger, and then.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you. One thing about home visits is it's our opportunity during home visits for us to go to them, right? I think a lot of times when we do other projects, it's them coming to us, them helping us. But home visits is an opportunity for us to go out to them and to share the gospel. And it's a both and, right? It's important to have both. So yeah, that's great, thank you. And then really quick, does someone want to do other service?
Sure. So yeah, for like cultural realities, I think it's going to be important to talk to the host to make sure that we understand, okay, like we're going to be working with these kids, and yeah, are these kids that one need to be like known and loved, but also like do they, just have like this indifference to the faith that we kind of see here in the United States as well, and that's something that like we need to be like inspiring in that. As far as like authentic need goes, I think again, like connecting with the host, connecting with groups in the past, and making sure like, we don't feel like we're coming in with a plan that we know what is best for these, for the people that we're going to be serving, and that we are open and communicating about like what those things are. As far as sustainability, I think like, for sports camps, which is the trip that some of us are doing, not just having like a place where parents just send their kids to get rid of their kids for, a few hours during the day, but like having a program for the parents too, while the kids are, participating in sports or whatever, whether that be like a holy hour or like a, some sort of formation for them as well. What was the last one?
Local buy-in.
Local buy-in. I think that goes hand in hand too with like trying to get parents invested in their children who, oftentimes that's not the case. Parents being invested in their children, and so trying to get them bought into, bringing their kids to and supporting their kids as they like participate in sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, those are our awesome thoughts, like inviting parents to do some sort of programming. If it's a sports camp for kids, I think that's a great idea. So as you can see, like everybody has a unique kind of role when they're doing different types of service, but there's also an overlapping theme amongst all of you guys, right? To work with the host, to understand what the actual need is in the community. And all of this, again, is designed for you guys to help think on your feet if something falls through. So we're going to move into another activity. And I'm going to pull up a schedule. And I want you guys to just tell me what you see is right about the schedule and what's wrong about the schedule. So we're going to skip the first one and move into this. Okay, so this is a sample schedule. What is right about the schedule? Yeah.
Is to get that the day before you depart for mission.
Technically, you would be correct, yes. Okay, what is wrong with that time frame, though?
Just absolutely. It's like,
Yeah, it doesn't give you time. If there's travel delays, if there's weather delays, if a student misses his or her connecting flight, they don't have time to get to the airport to board their flight at 12 a.m. Cool. What else is right or what else is wrong?
fancy restaurant.
Hey, what?
Fancy restaurant.
Fancy restaurant. Is that right or?
I mean, I think that's wrong.
What do you say that?
Going on mission. Is this gonna blow your budget on food? Like, no. It's gonna take a long time.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
Then Sunday, nothing happens until noon, and there's no mass.
You got it. There's nothing on Sunday. There's no non-negotiable.
And there's no prayer or talks.
There's no prayer. There's no talks. There's nothing. It's a vacation. Straight up vacation.
Local bars and security,
Like, yeah. Subsidiarity. Okay, what's also on mission, right? Okay, so one thing that I want to point out with the schedule is if you look purely on Saturday, there's actually nothing, I mean, maybe the fancy restaurant, you could work with your host a little bit, but there's actually nothing wrong with having a tourism day or with having like a pilgrimage day. We actually encourage you guys to have a pilgrimage day while you're on mission. But if your whole week looks like Saturday and Sunday, where you guys just aren't doing anything, where you guys aren't having mass, you guys aren't doing holy hours, you guys don't even have any talks lined up, that's a situation where if the host gives you the schedule and you look through it, you should instinctively think, hey, maybe I need to talk to the host about what we can do to invite people or to do something that actually benefits the community and not just ourselves. Right? Okay, so we're going to move in the last 5 to 7 minutes, we're going to move into one final activity. And this is really for your own trips, but what I want you guys to say in your groups is to work with each other to think like, hey, I have this question, what do you guys think? So bounce ideas off of each other. There's a lot of words that are going to come up on the screen, but basically, if you have a schedule already of your trip, pull that out, use it. And what I want you guys to do is take out a portion of your day. Maybe it's a Tuesday, maybe it's a Thursday, from 8 to 5, just take it out and pretend that your host has canceled the events for that day. And if she or he has, what are you going to do to fill that time? If you don't have a schedule, but you have general activities that you're doing, build out a day from 8 to 5. What are you going to do, again, to fill that time? And some things to think about, right? Fill out some non-negotiables, put mass, holy hour in there, some formation talks. Think about what host and what apostolate you're working with. So if you're serving breakfast, don't schedule it for 9 p.m., right? So if you're building stairs, you probably also don't want to set it in your schedule for 7 to 9 p.m. because you can't see the stairs. One thing is, I want you guys to be creative. By now, you should have a pretty good understanding of the students and the missionaries that are going on your trip. And so if there's like a ridiculously talented musician on your trip, and he or she wants to do music, think of doing a night fever, or think of doing a praise and worship night. Or if there's a really gifted artist, think about ways that you could do a building or a painting project for a local church. So go ahead and talk to your groups, fill out a schedule, and then the missions coaches, please walk around the tables and help your directors if they have any questions. Okay, here's some final thoughts for you guys. Maybe some of you guys feel overwhelmed. I know that when I was a mission director, I felt pretty overwhelmed as well. And I think sometimes there's this perception that it's all on me to build the schedule or it's all on me to plan everything. But the reality is, again, it's the job of the missions coach to build out the schedule with the host prior to your guys' arrival. And what the expectation is that you guys would be able to think on your feet, knowing the cultural reality, knowing the sustainability, knowing the local buy-in. And so, again, I want to reiterate to you guys that you guys already know a lot of what you're doing and what you're bringing and the value that you bring when you go on mission. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, grab your coach. That's what coach time is for. Sit down with them for 20, 30 minutes during lunch and just go over all of your fears, all of whatever. If you have questions about your schedule, sit down with your coach and have a meal with them. And if you want to know what a sample schedule looks like, it's on page 82 in your handbook. So that can give you a pretty good idea of what a week-long mission trip can look like. Again, let us know if you need